Uh, Morning. This game has like flashing lights and stuff, so if you're sensitive to that, don't watch this video.
Konami. These guys kind of suck. Was once one of the biggest third-party game publishers, has been completely consumed by greed and has basically abandoned all of their biggest IPs. One of these IPs is Castlevania, an iconic series of platformers with an amazing and extremely popular Netflix show and a huge legacy of great games and stories. And Konami has barely done anything with it since 2014. At least in terms of video games, the show doesn't really count. At least with Silent Hill and Metal Gear, they're trying to make remakes. The most Castlevania has gotten is 3 video game collections. So since I've been really getting into this franchise lately, I decided I would talk about all the mainline games. Hopefully, I haven't done a whole series of reviews like this. I really hope it pans out well. So, what better place to start than with Vampire Killer for the MSX2? Oh wait, I don't know how to emulate MSX stuff. Okay, Castlevania for the NES then. I can't find too much on this game's development, but what I do know is that the director was a man named Hitoshi Akamatsu. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Who wanted to make games more cinematic and made Castlevania with the idea that the players would feel like they're playing through a classic horror film. There are some cut ideas, like the protagonist originally being named Peter Dante, like the big one, instead of Simon Belmont, and also multi-directional whip attacks, and even being able to turn into a werewolf. Both of which were actually ideas that would be used for later games in the series. If you could see like the footage I put up. Yeah, let's start talking about the game. So, in 1986 in Japan and in 1987 in America, Castlevania came out for the Famicom Disk System, and in America it was, the Nintendo Entertainment System, that thing. So, starting up, we get your usual NES title screen. Although I like the film reels at the bottom and top, and I like that we actually get to see Dracula's castle itself. Most games just had a blank screen with a logo. It's even animated. That's cool. So after pressing the start button, you get this little cutscene. So what the hell is even going on in this game? Every 100 years, Dracula reappears to wreak havoc upon humanity, and in 1691, he once again reappeared, so our protagonist, Simon Belmont, descendant of the Belmont family, is destined to take Drac on with his legendary whip, the Vampire Killer. That's about it. The game does mention that the last Belmont to kill Dracula was called Christopher Belmont, which kind of serves as a setup for a later game, but that's not really important to this game. So yeah, the setup is basically, go kill Dracula. So we start our funny little home invasion, and we're blessed with the game's theme, Vampire Killer. So, as you can probably tell from the screen, this game is, a 2D platformer. And if you know anything about old Castlevania games, you know 2 things. 1. Whip. Simon's main attack is his whip, and it's got enough range to be extremely useful in taking out surrounding enemies, but not like, super overpowered. You can upgrade from a small leather whip to a chain whip to long chain whip. You probably won't ever be stuck at the first 2 levels. The game usually makes sure that you're at the maximum whip level if you're not. The other thing that you probably know about old Castlevania, and this is way more infamous, 2. Jump. So Simon can jump like literally any other side-scroller ever. No shit. But you see, the funny little thing about this game's jump is that you can never adjust the jump arc, which means that if you accidentally jump into a pit, get ready to hear. Another major mechanic are the sub-weapons, which can help you if an enemy just cannot be whipped, and they range from something simple as the knife, which I'm gonna be honest, the knife kind of sucks, so I barely used it. Choose something like holy water, which constantly damages enemies who come into contact with the fire it produces. If you couldn't tell, that one was my favorite. Of course, you can't just like spam them. You're limited by the amount of hearts you have. That's right, that's not your health. This is your health. The hearts are your weapon ammo. Why? I have no idea. This confused me when I started playing these games. Why? There's also the bags of money. These are extremely pointless and only contribute to your score. In a single-player home console game that doesn't save. Why are they here? Just to suffer? I don't know. There's also a screen nuke that yeah, this is why I put a flashlight warning. There's also invincibility too. Cool. Now that's most of the gameplay stuff. But what about what you're looking at? Well, as you can tell, that's a video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Obviously, the game's aged graphically. It's an NES game, of course it has. But for 1986, this game looks pretty great compared to some other NES games, like take Metroid, another game released in the same year, for example. That game uses these boring, plain black backgrounds. Meanwhile, Castlevania over here has these super detailed, for the time, backgrounds that really sell the vibe of an old, creepy, lived-in castle. Plus, the sprite work ain't bad either. Enemies look fine, the doors look okay, that animation's kinda clunky. And there's Simon. His actual sprite isn't that bad, but his walk cycle just looks really damn goofy. Judging from the later games that use a similar walk cycle, it's supposed to be a determined, albeit somewhat robotic, walk forward. But the way it looks in this game, Simon just looks like he's got to use the bathroom and he's holding it in. But, you know, otherwise, the game looks great. It really sells that playing a horror movie goal that Akamatsu was trying to go for. So the first level it's pretty simple. It's honestly pretty easy. And we come up on our first boss. A giant bat. It's pretty easily defeated by the axe that you get a few rooms before. Only thing of note is that after I killed it, I found this weird Roman numeral 2 thing. You can find these all throughout the game, and I never figured out what they did. What are they for? Also, lovely. So on to stage 2, and like immediately the game has a difficulty spike. You gotta deal with these Medusa head things which snake along the air. It can be pretty difficult to jump over them without... Yeah. Not only that, but this stage has way more bottomless pits than the last one, so you will probably end up jumping into one if you aren't careful. Surprisingly, I don't think I did. Way to go, me. Oh wait, here's some footage of me doing it. I'm disappointed in you, me. Even if Medusa isn't pushing you down a pit, you'll probably get hit by a lot of them and start thinking, damn, I need some health. And then you discover one of the things that makes Castlevania so hard. You can only get health from meat hidden in walls. You know, like most meat is hidden. Yeah, so, get ready to whip random walls, just in case there's health in them. I'm not complaining about it though, since the game usually isn't too obnoxious about hiding them, and you can find most of them if you just, like, you know, whip the walls every once in a while. So after falling and falling and falling and falling and falling, you come up to our second boss, Medusa. Because if you weren't tired of all the 10 gajillion Medusa heads before, here's a giant one. To be honest, she's not too bad, and she goes down pretty quickly, like, just like the bat, if you just use holy water instead of the axe. On to stage 3! Not much to mention about this stage itself, you know, it's solid. Although the music, Wicked Child, absolutely slaps for no reason at all. Listen to this. Now, by this point, you may have realized something. This game doesn't save, nor does it have any form of a password system. So, yeah, if you're playing the original NES version of this game, you gotta beat it in one go. Thankfully, the game doesn't do any stupid continues crap, like where you have to start from the beginning if you get to any game over, so you won't ever be sent back to stage 1. Funny enough, the original Japanese version could save, because it was on the Famicom Disk System. What's the Famicom Disk System? It was an add-on for the Japanese version of the NES, which was called Famicom, and basically, it let you play floppy disks on it. So the game was on a floppy disk instead of a cartridge, and a lot of games saved when in America they couldn't save, like Metroid, for example. The mechanic in Castlevania basically works that every time you die, you can save to whatever profile you created. Now, it's not like cartridge games couldn't save. Like Legend of Zelda, that game could save, but you had to put a battery in them. And obviously, Konami of America was being super cheap here because they didn't even bother to put a password system in. Thank God for the save states that modern collections have. Oh, by the way, did you know that the original Japanese name for this game was called Dracula's Satanic Castle? Gee, I wonder why they changed that. Now, anyways, at the end of stage 3, we fight these mummies who, they kind of suck. Either you're stuck between them and can't fight back, or, yeah. Now, stage 4. Stage 4. Stage 4 kind of sucks. You end up in what I think is supposed to be the castle's sewers, or it could just be a nearby cave, I don't know. The stage is mostly okay, up until you reach the boss, Igor and Frankenstein. The whole point is that you gotta kill Frankenstein while you have this stupid tiny bugger constantly hopping around and shooting fireballs and like... I already don't like the Fleaman enemy, which Igor basically is. They just jump around and constantly whiff your attacks. And now you have to deal with one that can't die, and he shoots fireballs, which, given how Shyman controls, it's hard to deal with. And it just makes playing through the entire stage a bit annoying, especially since the opening sewer section isn't great to begin with, because you have these obnoxious, randomly spawning bats to deal with while you do platforming. So I cheated. I made a save state right before the boss, but hey, at least I tried to beat it the legitimate way. But, eventually Frankenstein dies and we move on to stage 5 with one of the best songs in this entire game, Heart of Fire. Now, stage 5 is tough. Like, really, really tough. Not only is it long, but it's also got these ultra tough axe armor guys that take multiple hits to defeat, and, well, they throw axes at you. I don't think it ever really gets to the point of being super frustrating and annoying like stage 4, except for right here, maybe. The boss for this stage is deaf, and, like, goddamn, is he difficult. He flies around the room spawning these sickles, and they can very easily overwhelm you. I had to cheat for this one too. I'm not experienced enough to survive this. So after killing Death, we reach stage 6. The final stage. Oh, what the fuck? Stage itself is actually not that bad, especially compared to stage 5, and I think that's just because it's super short, and it has no boss. The game considers Dracula a separate stage, so yeah, stage 6 isn't really that notable. The music is really good though. The music is really good. Now, we finally confront Dracula, and wow, he sure is making up for Stage 6's lack of difficulty. He basically randomly spawns around the room and shoots fireballs. You can only deal damage by hitting his head, so your best bet is to wait until he shoots his fireballs, and then jump and hit him at the same time. This took me way too long to figure out, and so I spent a while just hearing da 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 da. So after losing some of my sanity and also, finally beating Dracula, the dude's head pops straight off and suddenly whatever the hell that is appears. And no, that isn't Dracula transformed into some hideous abomination or anything. That is apparently the Curse of Man, which was unleashed after Dracula's body split into pieces. This thing kind of jumps around and spits fire at you, and yeah, that's it. The difficulty is mostly relying on how much health you had after killing Dracula. As long as you have the holy water and walk under him when he jumps, and if your controller doesn't fucking disconnect, he isn't too hard, just takes a lot of hits. Once it dies, the castle crumbles, and we get the credits, learning the game was directed by Trance Fishers! We get these kind of like parody credits where it lists such iconic names like James Banana and Christopher B. And Simon's name is mistranslated as fucking Simon Belmondo. And now we're back at stage 1. So that was the original Castlevania. And to be honest, I didn't expect an older game like this to hold up this well. But to be honest, besides, I don't know, stage 4's boss, this game was pretty good all the way through. Which for first entries for a lot of games, even newer ones, that's not very common. Especially for like old NES stuff. So obviously, Castlevania sold pretty well. And in 1988, we got a sequel, Simon's Quest. I'll talk about this one if I don't procrastinate on it. Bye! So, Castlevania 1 was pretty good, if you watch my review of it. Wink, nudge, please watch the video, please. Castlevania wasn't only good, it sold pretty well too. Obviously, Konami wanted to capitalize on that, and the director, Hitoshi Akamatsu, had a genius idea. Make another one. And thus they began to develop Castlevania II, Simon's Quest. Akamatsu wanted to go for a more open style platformer, obviously taking inspiration from Metro... What the fuck is a Maze of Gallius? So this is another Konami platformer, which actually is a lot like Castlevania 2. It's open world, it's got a map, which Castlevania 2 doesn't have, never mind. It also has a lot of RPG mechanics in it, like a whole item menu and stuff. Also, the music's pretty good too. It's more clear to see that this is the game that Akamatsu cited as his main inspiration for Castlevania 2. There's probably one more thing I should say about Castlevania 2 before we start. People fucking hate this game. At least they do now. Back when it first released, it was praised almost entirely because it was long. Yeah, so people's standards changed, and nowadays people think it's bad, and it's kind of considered the black sheep of the franchise. Heck, you know the Angry Video Game Nerd? The guy that popularized angry video game reviews? The very first review he did was of this game and why it sucks. So, if you couldn't tell, I didn't have much confidence in this game to be good. But, enough preamble, let's go on to the review. So past the nice title screen, we get this prologue text.
Stand in the shadows of the Hell House. You've arrived back at Transylvania on business to destroy forever the curse of the evil Count Dracula.
What? Well, when the game won't explain the story, then we gotta consult the manual. Alright, what do we got here? Congratulations, you now own the authentic Konami home version of Simon's Quest, one of Konami's many original arcade hits. Oh. Someone messed up. Okay, so the story is that 7 years after Simon killed Dracula and that thing, he went to visit his family's resting place when suddenly a vision of some woman appears, and she says that he has been cursed by that thing. And that said, cursed is slowly killing him. If he wants to undo the curse, Simon's gotta get the 5 body parts of Dracula, take them to Drac's castle, and seal him. Because I guess he didn't do that before. Also, equally important, Simon looks like He-Man. That's a very important plot point. Trust me. To be honest, I actually kind of like this premise a lot. NES games weren't exactly known for having deep or original plots. Most of the time it was just very simple, especially platformers. There were exceptions, but they were very, very uncommon. Simon's Quest doesn't have a complex plot, but the premise is more original compared to kill that guy or save princess insert here. So I applaud the developers for cooking with their premise. One more thing before we actually start gameplay. I'm going to use a guide just to prevent me from getting super lost, because this game makes you do some dumb shit. So after hitting start, we end up in wherever this is, some sort of town or something. Not much here. This guy's telling me to buy a white crystal. Guess I'll do that. I buy crystal. Go out into the forest and I think I got lost. So I reset my game and I actually read my guide instead of just skimming over it. So Castlevania 2 is an open world side scroller. A lot of people compare it to Metroidvania games like, well, Metroid or the later Castlevanias. In my opinion though, this game is way more like a side-scrolling RPG than a Metroidvania, and it's way more linear than Metroid. You generally only go in one direction while you're exploring, and you really don't backtrack very much. Simon controls like almost exactly the same as the last game, although I think the platforming feels slightly less smooth. I don't know, I think it's just a me thing. One of the weirdest differences, though, is that hearts, which were only weapon ammo in the last game, are now they're now the currency. It's so weird, especially since there's still ammo for the more powerful sub-weapons, and like the first game already had the perfect money equivalent with, you know, the bags of money. I don't know. I don't know why they keep using the hearts for the weirdest things. Simon also now has an inventory with all his sub-weapons and stuff, which contributes to that RPG-like feeling. And about sub-weapons, they're okay, I guess. I never really relied on them as much as I did in the first game, because, spoiler, this game is easy as shit. The weaker sub-weapons don't take any hearts, which unintentionally makes the knife way more useful than it was in Castlevania 1, especially in the early game. A major mechanic of this game is also the day-night system, where basically, while you're exploring, after a while the night falls and enemies get more stronger and drop more hearts, and every town is completely deserted until the sun rises again. On principle, that's a fine mechanic. The only problem is that you have no idea when it's going to change, and like, it's not really more difficult as it is just more tedious, because once again, this game's easy. And since towns are basically useless at night, you kind of just start grinding at night, waiting until the sun rises, just killing the same few enemies, because every enemy just immediately respawns once you walk away a few feet. It's not a very well thought out mechanic. Honestly though, the worst mechanic is dying. When you die, you just respawn back where you last were. What about when you get a game over? Same thing, you just lose your hearts. Which, I mean, you can just get them back from mindless grinding. If you couldn't tell, this is why the game's so damn easy. So gameplay-wise, the game isn't faring too well. At least it's nice graphically. It's about on par with Castlevania 1. In fact, I think it uses a few sprites from Castlevania 1. Like Simon himself, it's very obvious that they just kind of took his old sprite and redrew it. But I will say, his walk cycle looks much better than before. They slowed it down to look more determined and less like he's a waddling hunchback. The environments are also pretty good, still as creepy and detailed even during the daytime screens, which is pretty impressive. But honestly, the best part is the music. It's really, really good. Even if there's only 9 songs in the soundtrack, yeah, I'm not kidding though. It's only 9 songs, counting the password screen and the credits theme. There's some damn bangers here, especially the one that most Castlevania fans know, Bloody Tears. I think this may be one of my favorite recurring songs in the series, even more than Vampire Killer. But, did you know? The Japanese version sounds different? Yeah, that's right. Much like Castlevania 1, Castlevania 2 was also released on the Famicom Disk System. And not only does it let you save, and this time the cartridge version actually has a password system in place of it, but Castlevania 2 specifically took advantage of the increased sound capabilities to make more complex music. Like, instead of they got and I'm gonna be honest, I don't think they use it very well. While I do like the disc version of Bloody Tears, heck, I kind of prefer it. Some of the other songs sound grating in the disc version, especially like Monster Dance. Besides that, the only other thing to note about the Japanese version is that I do not know how The Night Falls was mistranslated into "What a horrible night to have a curse" in the original version. And also the name is Dracula. Wait. I gotta put on the proper voice.
Dracula 2, The Curse Seal.
Holy fuck, that name sounds cool as hell. But enough about graphics and music and gameplay and stuff. Let's continue where we left off. So what I was supposed to do was get the white crystal and then head to this place. But Berkeley Mansion. So I decided to do that this time. Was it worth?
No.
This is the game's first manor, and the level design sucks. It's way too vertical for Castlevania controls, and the platforming isn't challenging at all. They just randomly stick fake blocks in it that make you have to redo the platforming again. And like, this isn't actually difficult, because if I die, I just respawn where I died. So it's honestly more frustrating than anything. Our goal in this mansion, and every other mansion, is to find this merchant guy, and then buy a steak from him, and use said steak to take a part of Dracula's body. So I do that here, and I get Dracula's rib. Oh, sorry, I possess Dracula's ribs. And Simon, for some reason, decides to use them as a shield. I mean, It works, so I guess he's on to something here. After that, we head through these caves and find the sub-weapon, the Sacred Flames, which, they'll be important way later. What else? Fuck these spiders. And then we end up in a town called, Ajaba. I buy some garlic, which, for some demented reason, is used to find secrets. I don't know. Then night falls. And you know what that means?
It's time to grind!
Isn't this game just the best? We buy, laurels, which, make Simon invincible. Then we buy the blue crystal, which we use at this lake to go underwater and arrive at our next manor, Rover Mansion. Same complaints as the last one, we get Drax Heart. Then we go all the way back to the first town and into the marshes and is that guy on the boat from Run Out of Blood? Whoa! Best character. Anyways, it takes us to the next mansion, but only if we have the heart equipped. I learned that the hard way. The next mansion is called Eifergore. Once again, nothing new. Same bad level design. Holy shit! Steph! Wow, our first boss! 3 mansions in! Legit, all he does is slowly float towards us and shoot 1 sickle. I don't know what's worse, how mindlessly easy this is, or the fact that I somehow died to it. At least defeating him gives us a golden knife. After that, we get Drax's Eye and head to the town of Alba. We get a red crystal, and one of the NPCs tells me not to look into the Death Star. Ooh! Now, you may be wondering, how do we head to our next mansion? Well, we walk here with the red crystal and... video games. This mansion gives us Dracula's nail, like a piece of his nail or something. Is this supposed to be his claw? Alright then. While heading to the next mansion, out of nowhere, this guy just randomly upgrades my whip into a fire whip, which is dope as hell. So our last mansion is Laruba Mansion. And guess what? There's nothing new to talk about! Well, there is another boss, I guess. It's that thing, Carmilla, who is actually a staple boss of the series that shows up in later games. So that's something. She's super easy, though. We get Dracula's ring, like a wedding ring or something. I don't know. Well, we go past the last 2 towns, and now we reach Dracula's abandoned castle. And you know what? This moment's pretty good. The sprite work and music really sells this empty and lonely vibe. We then come up to this pedestal, and Dracula's parts recombine into, well, take a guess. And you remember the Sacred Flame item from earlier? Yeah, that just breaks this fight in half. Watch this. So Dracula actually dies this time, and we get one of 3 really badly translated endings. One where Simon dies while killing Dracula, one where Simon kills Dracula, but Dracula comes back as a zombie, and one where Simon kills Dracula, and that's it. And after beating Castlevania 2, I can only come to one conclusion. This game is fucking mid as shit. It's not frustratingly bad, but it's more just like disappointing, especially given how much I love the first game. It's a little upsetting to watch this game fall flat on its face. Not a lot though, because I've played the later games in the series and I know that they're great. It's got good ideas too. The premise is cool and unique, the music is awesome, and an open Castlevania has been proven to work. They just executed the gameplay in such a bleh way that it didn't really have the chance to capitalize on the concept. Honestly, Konami should remake this as a proper Metroidvania. That'd be dope. Although I doubt they would because, well, Konami is Konami. But anyways, next up is Castlevania 3. That may take a bit because that game's hard, so see ya! Castlevania was one of the most iconic NES platformers of its time. Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was, not. If you've watched the review I did of it, you'd know I kind of just found it a really easy, boring, just overall really disappointing sequel. Although it had some pretty cool concepts. Despite that, we got one more sequel for the NES, Castlevania 3. Now, I don't know anything about this game's development. It's the only one of the NES games to have no development section on Wikipedia. So, I don't know why, but Akamatsu reverted to the classic linear gameplay, and thank God he did, because Castlevania 3 is really fucking good. So to start, I want to know that much like the other 2 games, this has some differences between the American and Japanese versions. Now, surprisingly, Castlevania 3 was actually not released on the Famicom Disk System in Japan. Instead, it got a normalized cartridge. Except they actually had a special VCR6 co-processor chip, and basically what it did was add some extra sound channels so that the game sounds nicer and more complex. I barely understood most of that sentence. When the game got localized in America though, the NES wasn't compatible with the sound chip, so it didn't get the extra sound channels, which means the American version sounds like this. And the Japanese version sounds like this. Also, the American version is harder for no damn reason. I didn't want to deal with that, so I decided to use a translated ROM of the Japanese version. So, say hi to the RetroArch UI. Okay, now I can actually start talking about the video game I'm supposed to be talking about. So, starting at the title screen, the film reels are back! Holy peak! And also we get, like, a proper story explanation in the game itself, instead of just being in the manual. The story is, many years before Castlevania 1, an evil man named Vlad Tepes, or, you know, Dracula, revives some dark gods to terrorize the land. The church gets the help of the exiled Belmont clan, hiring Trevor Belmont to kill the funny guy in the castle. It's not as interesting as Castlevania 2's premise, but the plot isn't super important in these games yet. And I like that it serves as an origin story for the series, even if it isn't the origin story for the series anymore. So before we start our first level, we get a name entry screen like Castlevania 2, and I name myself. After that, we open on Trevor praying. And we're off. So gameplay wise, Castlevania 3 basically goes back to Castlevania 1's mechanics. Thank God. Not much has actually changed from 1, the core gameplay is basically the same. Same goes for the level design too, it's basically got the same kind of philosophy as Castlevania 1, and it's about as polished as it was too. Same goes for the music and graphics too. I'm not going to go for another tangent about how these games have impressive graphics for the NES. I think you get it. Although I do want to mention, they managed to fix that weird door animation from Castlevania 1. I will point out the music though. Beginning is a great song. But yeah, that's most of the main gameplay stuff out of the way. So, continuing on with the stage. We go through this church, and then reach a graveyard with our first boss, Skeleton Man. We kill him, and proceed onward to a branching path. You see, Castlevania 3's main big gimmick is that you can choose different paths on any playthrough, and thus you go through different levels. It's a really smart idea, and it really helps with the game's replay value, although it means I can't really review all the levels in a single playthrough. But anyways, I go up into the clock tower. It's a pretty fun vertical level, and it also has these weirdly well animated gears. Like, NES games couldn't do built-in sprite rotation, and typically games just flipped sprites or had like only 4 frames of animation to display something spinning. But this gear turns like super smoothly, which means the sprite artist drew a separate sprite for each time this thing turned. Why did you guys torture yourselves? At the top of the tower, we fight our second boss, this goblin thingy. And then when we defeat it, it turns into this dude. His name's Grant, and he decides to tag along with us as we get another one of Castlevania 3's main gimmicks, multiple playable characters. There's 3 of them, and Grant was the first one I found. What he can do is throw knives, or just stab in the American version because, I don't know. And more importantly, you can control his jump guard. Oh my god! I don't think I need to tell you how useful this is with the levels. Genuinely, it makes it so I just kind of play as Grant for a while without ever switching back to Trevor. Oh, and he can also crawl up walls like Spa-Man. Well, we leave the clock tower, go through these woods and a swamp, kill a giant bat, and end up in these caves. The whole gimmick here is that you got this like acid stuff that melts blocks, and you either go to avoid it quick enough or wait for it to melt a path for you. It's a hit or miss mechanic. I feel like the waiting is a bit obnoxious, honestly, but it helps if the stage isn't too hard, so you won't have to repeat it too much. There's also these enemies that cry bloody tears. Anyways, we can. Holy fuck, is Dracula! Kill! Oh, so that's not Dracula. That's his son Alucard. He decides to join us, and thus Grant leaves, and I exchange him for Alucard, which was a horrible decision because Alucard sucks. His attacks don't do shit, and he literally has no advantages over Trevor besides turning into a bat to skip platforming sections, which is a limited ability anyways. But I continue on. At first I tried beating this like aquatic palace stage, but it was too hard. But I want to make note of the music, it's really good. So I took the alternate path, killed another skeleton, and ended up at the bottom of Dracula's castle. This stage is... No. Well, besides the trauma from Castlevania 1's Stage 4, this stage is fine. We even fight Frankenstein just like Stage 4. Thank God Igor isn't here. Okay, so the next stage. This stage kinda sucks. It would have been fine if it was just split into 2 stages, but no. They have you fight the giant bat again, and then it keeps going. And if you game over, you end up at the very start again. It's just too long. At least the, boss is neat. It's a ghost that possesses 3 different bodies. That's neat. After we kill it, we finally enter the castle proper. The next stage is pretty great. We travel through the front end of the castle, and we even get a new rendition of Vampire Killer. At the end, we even fight Death, whose battle is once again difficult, unlike Castlevania 2, where the battle was, It was shit. The battle was really shit. He's even got a second phase that isn't as hard as the first one. But it's better than Castlevania 2! We continue onward to the next stage, which is also pretty good until the end. They bring in the crows from Castlevania 1, but they're super annoying now. They basically swoop at you in an arc, which makes them really annoying and hard to hit. Unlike in Castlevania 1, where they flew at you in a straight line. Unfortunately, this game is kind of the basis for the rest of the series and how the crows work. But after that, we fight Trevor Belmont 2! He's a little like me in that he's a little freaking stupid. After that, we move into the clock tower with this really great and climactic music. Like in Castlevania 1, we reach Dracula's fight after the clock tower. Although, unlike Castlevania 1, Dracula isn't counted as a separate stage, so you get sent back to the clock tower. Unless you use save states like I did. Dracula's fight consists of him being a wizard, a horrifying abomination, and then a bird. Honestly, past the first phase, he isn't very hard. If I didn't fight him with only 1 hit point, but eventually, he dies and the castle crumbles. The Belmonts become legend, and each of the partners has a different ending. Grant starts rebuilding the destroyed cities, Alucard reflects on his future, and Sypha is the third partner you can find. I didn't find her, but I gave her a test run with a cheat. Not as good as Grant, but better than Alucard. Oh, right, it's technically a spoiler that Sypha is a woman. Sypha is a woman. So in her ending, she and Trevor got together. So, that was Castlevania 3. God, this game is such a breath of fresh air after the disappointment of 2. It's challenging, it's got great replayability, and generally pretty good level design. Now, between this game and 1, I think I prefer Castlevania 1, just because it's shorter. But I've also played that one twice. And I just beat this one for the first time, so my opinion may change. I don't know. It looks like the good games don't stop here, because the next game after this is Super Castlevania IV, which used to be considered, one of the best games of all time. But I'm going to take a little break from Castlevania Retrospective. Next up, I'm probably going to be talking about a different vampire game. A wink, nudge, nudge.